There we go. And we'll go ahead and get going. And if other folks join us, that's great. And if not, they can watch the playback. So welcome, everybody. Some of you that I joined are already kind of in our ecosystem as instructors or trainers or, Kendra's our new program manager. So I asked some of them to be with us today as well so that they could offer their perspective, or if there's certain questions that come up that might be more directly related to what they're up to or kind of how they view some of what we're doing at the Institute. I wanted to have multiple voices, so it wasn't just me. So anyway, thank you guys. And then thank you for everybody else showing up and having interest in our program. What I thought I would do just to kind of kick it off is go through just a quick overview of what the NeuroMeditation Institute is and kind of what our certification process looks like, so that that's kind of, some of those basics are out of the way. And then hopefully we have lots of time for questions and whatnot. And that being said, as I'm going through this, if something's not clear or you have a question or you want to jump in, please jump in. I wanted this to be much more of a dialogue rather than me doing a presentation. But those of you that know me know I can't help myself. I had to make a PowerPoint, just how I work. So anyway, I'm Jeff Tarrant, and I'm the director of the NeuroMeditation Institute. I guess we've been around, the Institute has been around for about 5 years. So still fairly young in some ways, but things are growing rapidly, which is partly why I wanted to do this, is to clarify some things and kind of answer some questions for folks that may have interest, but weren't certain about certain elements. So because I don't know everybody who's on the call and I don't know what you know about us, I wanted to give a real quick kind of overview of what the heck is neuromeditation. When we use that term, what are we talking about? And really, we're using the term neuromeditation to talk about using brain-based principles to meditation practices. And then you can see kind of after I've got for mental health, that tends to be our orientation, is how can we use meditation practices or meditation-based interventions to facilitate wellness, mental wellness, physical wellness. So some of the pieces that I think are really critical to this, that are going to show up over and over as we kind of go through our different programs, is that one of the things that we feel is very important is being able to identify what style of meditation is going to be the best match for your particular goals or needs. So that's one thing I think that distinguishes our approach from maybe some other approaches. And then once we kind of understand that, utilizing a variety of different tools and techniques that, have been proven, things that we know that work, to help people find those types of meditative states, and for their own personal development. That can be done in group settings. It can be done individually. There's a lot of different ways to do that. The third part is a really strong emphasis on this kind of individualized approach, which you've probably already kind of heard in the way I was describing this. One of the things that's important to us is understanding that everybody is different, everybody's unique. And so in many cases, it doesn't make sense to use the same approach for everybody. In some cases that can work, but in many cases, we're missing the individual there and we're not addressing specific needs or concerns. We want our approach to be developmentally appropriate, meaning that we don't want to ask somebody to do some sort of a practice that they're not ready for. There's a way that we can help people build their meditation muscles, and there's a process for that. And so we want to respect that. And then the third one that I've got here is having a trauma-informed perspective, and really trying to bring that into everything we do, understanding that people who have experienced difficult life events, which is pretty much all of us, but of course to varying degrees, that can really have a significant impact on how we are able to engage with different kinds of meditative practices. And so that's really important to understand so that we're not putting people in a situation that's likely to cause more problems. We want meditation to be helpful, and there's a way to do that. We just have to be thoughtful about it in certain cases. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about this, but I kind of referenced the idea that there's different styles of meditation. So in general, we talk about 4 different styles: focus, mindfulness, open heart, and quiet mind. Sometimes we'll talk about a 5th style called deep states. And really what distinguishes these different styles are how you're using your attention, what your intention is, what brainwave patterns are involved in that particular practice, and what brain regions. So because we know a lot now about how different meditations affect the brain, we can kind of use that information to our benefit. And we know that not all meditations are the same. It depends. It depends how you're paying attention. It depends on what your intention is. So we're really trying to sort of take advantage of all the research that's been done so that we can kind of move into these spaces in the way that makes the most sense. And this is kind of just a really quick overview and simplification of kind of how you can start to apply these different styles to specific goals and needs. So, you know, if some of your concerns relate to sort of cognitive functions, then focus practices can be a really powerful way to engage your frontal lobes and develop those skills. Mindfulness, while it can be helpful for lots of things, because of the way it impacts the brain, it's particularly useful for managing stress and anxiety as sort of a counterbalance. In fact, that's a lot of what you're seeing with these different styles, is that the style of meditation provides a counterbalance to what happens in the brain with certain concerns. So focus is a counterbalance for ADHD. Mindfulness is a counterbalance for stress and anxiety. Open heart can be a counterbalance for things like unresolved grief or resentment, anger, you know, unresolved anger issues, certain kinds of depression. Quiet mind is kind of a funny one because it can be useful for a lot of things, but it's also one of the more challenging ones for people to experience. So, you know, we talk about it as really being particularly useful if there are certain concerns with identity, how you see yourself, how you think about yourself. Of course, that could be just about everybody and any kind of concern, right? But again, there's some specific ways that we can use that to assist with folks. So this is just a quick overview so that you can kind of get the idea of how we start to think about the different styles and how they might apply to specific individuals. Now, what do we offer? So we have a center in Eugene, Oregon. That's where I'm located. But we're really sort of a larger system than that. We have instructors and trainers all over the world, actually, and who are using these in different ways. So weekly classes, you know, sort of like a 6-week series or an 8-week series or something like that. We host monthly events, of course, not right now, but once we're able to, we'll resume that again. So, you know, things like sound meditations or breath work or things like that that you're not necessarily going to do on a weekly basis, but you know, it's kind of a little special event. We've been doing a lot of webinars lately, and that's something that we had started before the pandemic and will continue as a way to kind of offer people a bite-sized chunk of what we offer. Individual services, I can say most of the folks involved with us are in the mental health field in some form or fashion. Not everybody, but a lot of folks are. Or whether it's yoga or coaching, whatever. Working with people individually is another approach that many of us use. Workshops, intensive trainings, things like that. We'll be talking more about that in a moment. Mentoring and coaching, certification program, which we'll also be talking about, and then retreats with an asterisk, because we haven't actually done that yet, but it's on the agenda. So again, once once we kind of get out of this pandemic situation and we can start to think about having larger group get-togethers, that's something that we hope to be able to do in the next year or so. So there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of use the information and the techniques that we teach in the program. What we're going to be kind of emphasizing today is the certification program, what that looks like, the different types of certifications, and then some of the intensives that are coming up that can be part of the certification training itself. So this is a very busy slide, but what I was trying to do here is show you that there's really 3 different primary ways that people tend to get involved with neuromeditation in terms of training. And so the first one, I'm just kind of generically calling neuromeditation. And you can see that the first 3 things that are highlighted are things we already talked about. So people who are in this track, you're going to be learning the neuroscience behind each of the meditation styles. How does each of those 4 styles impact the brain? Why is that important? How is that a counterbalance for certain concerns? So that's the second one, right? Being able to connect each of those styles to specific concerns and goals, identifying which styles might be best for you or your clients or students. Now, the reason those first 3 are highlighted is because that's going to occur no matter which track you happen to be involved in. That's kind of the basis for a lot of what we do. And then the rest is kind of like, well, how are you going to approach that? That's where each of the tracks is a little bit different. So that first track, you're really going to be exploring a variety of different techniques to sort of assist and to teach other people. And so a lot of that is going to look more traditional, sort of guided meditations, things like that, right? But then of course we have a lot of additional techniques and tools that we work with. Some of it is, stuff like breath work, but then there are things like using different kinds of technology. Obviously there's going to be a strong emphasis on the trauma-informed approach. And then, there's really going to be an emphasis on developing your skills so that you can comfortably and effectively use this with individual clients or in groups. And so there's actually a lot that goes on in there. There's, because there are so many different techniques and tools and interventions that we expose people to. What we hope is that you will discover certain things that work really well for you, that resonate with you, that you could comfortably use with your clients or students. And we know that there's way more in there than most people will ever use. But that's okay because, again, we're all different and we want everybody to have options, to have choices, both for you and for the people you work with. The next track, which is really how this whole thing got its start, is combining neurofeedback with meditation. So we're calling it EEG neuromeditation. So measuring people's brain waves and feeding back information through an audio signal to them about when they're in the desired meditative state. So this is really a way to, I refer to it as a power tool. It's a power tool to really help people understand their internal states, be able to shift into those states more easily and learn how to sustain them. And this is it's very powerful. And we do a lot of this type of training. Again, that's kind of how we got our start, really. And it's not for everybody, right? Because if you don't already have a neurofeedback background, there's a fairly steep learning curve in terms of learning how brain waves work in much more detail and how to use the equipment, and how to sort of use the equipment effectively. So the big difference between this track and the first track is the technique, right? So the EEG track is almost exclusively devoted to using that one technique in the context of neuromeditation. The first one, there's a whole mess of techniques, I haven't counted because we don't really have, we don't have specific things necessarily, but maybe 20 different things, right? Whereas the second one is very targeted to neurofeedback. Now we do add some extra stuff in there, but again, you get the idea. And then the third track is kind of our newest training track, and it's specific to the practice of yoga. And so Angie, who's with us, there she is the director of the NeuroMeditation yoga program. And so even though we're not emphasizing that quite as much in this particular talk, that's probably going to be its own talk because it's its own thing. One of the elements are some of the approaches that are being used there are going to be taking the neuromeditation information and methods, but then really combining it with more traditional yogic techniques. So pranayama, asanas, meditation. So those, the big three, right? So it kind of, so thinking like, EEG neuromeditation, the primary tool is neurofeedback. Well, with yoga, the primary tools are going to, be pranayama, asanas, and meditation. So it's just a more specific track. So so those are the three different ways that people will primarily train with us. Now I say primarily because just because, you might be interested in all of them. Well, you can do all of them. They're not mutually exclusive. In fact, they work really well together. And having sort of a more well-rounded exposure to it, I think, adds to each of them. Some of the folks who are our trainers have done that, where maybe they started in one track and then they decided to learn more about another one. So you can certainly, explore multiple avenues here. And some people are very happy to kind of pick one track and hang out there. Does this all make sense so far?
Yes.
Yeah, you got to jump in there. I talk fast and I'll just keep going. So, okay. So here's the other aspect, another very busy slide. Sorry about that. These are the two busy slides. Figured I'd get them out of the way. So there's three different ways that you can get involved with training. And then there's kind of two levels of training. So the first level, level one, is the instructor level. And level two is the trainer level. So level one is really what we're going to be talking about today, because if you're just exploring this, obviously you start with level one, right? So the difference between the two, of course, is that level two is a more advanced training. Those are people who have already gone through level one, and they have moved into the role of actually being teachers for the Institute. So they are training other professionals in these different concepts and approaches. And right now, I think we've only got maybe 4 trainers, 5, something like that. So it's a much smaller group because it's a much more extended, intense training. But when you're kind of at that level, then you're actually starting to provide mentoring for folks, at the instructor level, teaching the workshops, teaching the classes, as part of the training. The level one, really what you're doing with your training there is, you're able to offer individual services, small groups, webinars, things that you would normally do in whatever your practice is. You're just not authorized to sort of teach through the Institute as, one of our trainers. So that's kind of the big distinction. There's other, sort of finesse distinctions, but those are the big ones, because it's a little confusing with the names, like instructor and trainer. Like, what's the difference? Those could sound very similar, but they are different. So I want to go into a little bit more detail about the instructor level, level one. So what does it take in order to get certified? How does that work? And these are kind of the little pieces, right? So the first piece is completing one of our workshops, a 3-day workshop. That could be a yoga workshop. It could be an EEG workshop. It could be a more, from that first track, just a neuromeditation in general kind of an approach. Right now we're offering those kinds of things online, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Again, when we're able to return to, kinds of in-person training, we'll have those intensives kind of over a long weekend. That's usually how that's taught, like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday kind of a thing. So we'll be offering more of that as well. And I say, or its equivalent, right? Because in some cases, we might offer something that's a little bit different than a 3-day training, but it kind of meets that requirement. And, when we do that, we will state that, in the offering so that it's clear. One example is that we have a distance learning course that is available all the time. It's a learn at your own pace kind of a thing. And, and that meets the requirement, even though it's not a 3-day workshop per se. It's actually probably longer than a 3-day workshop. It's like 57 lessons. There are other ways to kind of meet that requirement. And I put that first. Technically, you don't have to do that first, but honestly, if you're thinking about certification, I feel pretty strongly like that's something that you should do first, because it provides a really strong foundation for understanding at least the basics of how this works. And so having that to start with is super helpful. And, having had, quite a number of people go through the process over the last few years, we've clearly found that people who do that first have I think a better training experience. Because otherwise it's confusing, right? You're learning stuff, but you don't understand certain concepts. So after that, the other requirements ideally all kind of happen at the same time, or in the same time frame together. So you're working with a individual mentor, or it could be in a small group, which again, we'll talk about in a minute. And the mentor needs to be somebody who is one of our trainers. So Stephanie, who's on the call right now, she's one of our trainers. And Angie, obviously. I don't know if there's anybody else on the call who's a trainer at the moment. Can't see everybody. Heather was going to join us. I don't know if she made it. At any rate, working with one of our trainers individually. And the point of that, even though I kind of jumped all the way down to number 5, that is really the other, I feel like, big component of the certification process. And it's become really critical, because that's where you start to take this information and these methods and apply them to your specific situation. And then you've got somebody that can help you work out the kinks, figure out problems, and help you develop this for yourself. Again, it's very individualized. Our process is individualized, which makes it, I think, powerful and also a little tricky, because it's not just like, oh, just do this and do this and do this, and oh, you're done. You know everything you need to know. It's like, well, what if you work in a VA hospital with vets versus working in a middle school? That your needs are going to be completely different. And so again, we want you to be able to take this information and apply it to your specific situation, and to work with a mentor that's going to be the best fit. So we have different mentors that have different backgrounds and expert levels of expertise with different things. So you can work with somebody that's going to be the best fit for you. So while you're doing that, we obviously want you using it with your clients or your students, or, teaching, offering talks in the community, whatever. But, using the information actively. That's why these things really go together, because that makes the mentoring very rich, to be able to have that material to work with while you're doing the mentoring process. Obviously, maybe it's not obvious, but it should be obvious. We expect you to have your own meditation practice and be using this for yourself. That might be one of the best ways to learn about this, is to really apply it to your own practice. And then the other one is completing a review of the book, Meditation Interventions to Rewire the Brain. And it's not a book report per se. Really what we want is for you to and there's kind of a structure to this, but to go through the chapters and use it as a tool to add to your learning, but then also for you to start to really think critically about some of the material. What are things you agree with? What are things you don't agree with? How does this fit for you? How doesn't it fit for you? So it's really a way to challenge your thinking and kind of help advance your knowledge. So those are really the big pieces to this. Typically, it takes people, I would say, about 6 months to get through everything. But again, it's paced. You can pace it however you want. I've had people blast through this in a couple of months, and I've had people take a year and a half. So again, that's the good and the bad, right? It's like if there was a really clear structure that, it's like you do this week 1, do this week 2. But we also want to respect people's, different needs. The certification fee is $300 for a 2-year period. That's after you've completed all of the requirements. We don't ask for that up front. Like we wait till you're sort of done. If you, what are the benefits? Why would you even want to do this? Well, hopefully you would want to do it just to really advance your learning and to feel really confident in how you were using this material. I mean, that's really what it's about, right? I mean, that's what any certification is about, is to develop your level of understanding to a higher degree. You can use the initials NMI after your name. We'll put you on our website. There's a little screenshot over there of some of our instructors on the website. So you'll have kind of a profile on there. It's a way for us to kind of promote you and drive some traffic to whatever specific things you offer. You'll be invited to attend our monthly mentoring calls. So we have a monthly call with our instructors and trainers to, cover new information, do some case studies, talk about some of the new research that's out there, explore other interventions, et cetera. You'd have access to everything on our distance education website, which is a lot. There's a lot on there. And we keep adding material, including a whole bunch of guided meditations. We record our monthly webinars and put those on there. So there's a lot of info you'd have access to. You get discounts on future stuff. You can become an affiliate if you like, if that's something you're interested in, and make a little bit of extra money selling our distance courses. And then at that point, once you've been an instructor for a while, you would have the ability to apply to become a trainer. And again, that may not be for in fact, we don't expect it to be for everybody. But for some folks, that's something they're interested in, is being able to teach other professionals. So we have a couple of, so that's step number 1, right? That's step number 1 of the 3-day workshop. So we have a couple of things that are coming up, like right now, that I wanted to kind of highlight, because if this seems like something you might be interested in, you might want to explore these options because they're coming up very soon. So one of them is, again, sorry for the busy slide, but so we have a NeuroMeditation online intensive. That's that first track, right? So kind of a broader perspective. And so this is an interesting approach that we're trying, and so far I'm liking it. So when you sign up for this, you would get access to the distance learning masterclass. That's the ginormous course that's learn at your own pace. That's 57 lessons divided into these 6 modules that you can see there. You would have lifetime access to all of that. You could be able to download everything that's in there in terms of the meditations and the PDFs. So you would kind of be doing that at your own pace, sort of. Here's kind of the addition that we added to this, because we wanted this to serve as kind of a fast track option to certification. So for people who are like, okay, I want to get certified, but I don't want it to take 6 months. Like, I want to do this. And so we created this process where we actually have 3 small groups and you'll be assigned to one of the groups. So Camila, who I don't think she's with us this morning, maybe she is, just haven't seen her. She's based in Poland. Heather Hargraves, she's based in Canada. And then Stephanie, who is in North Carolina, United States. And so those are 3 of our small group leaders. So you would be working with one of those groups. I was looking at a question. Elizabeth, I'll get right to your question here in just one sec. So you would be assigned to one of those groups, and you would meet 3 times. You can see the dates and the times listed there. And you can see they're kind of spread out just a little bit, because this is a way for you to work through the distance education lessons, and then have a small group mentoring session to be able to explore that in more detail, look at how you're using it in your practice or with your clients, and do some of that sort of small group mentoring. So the small groups are probably going to be 4-ish people per group, maybe 5, we'll see. And so what you would do is you would do module 1 and module 2 prior to the first group meeting, and then 3 and 4 before the second meeting, and 5 and 6 before the third meeting. So this is a way to kind of structure the time and facilitate the learning. So those small groups would count for 6 hours of your mentoring. So by the time you finish this intensive, you'd be done with the first, the 3-day workshop requirement, and you would have 6 out of the 10 hours of mentoring completed. We decided that we really want at least some of the mentoring hours to be individual, because it's just very valuable. So those 4 hours would need to be set up with whoever you decided to mentor with. And I would recommend, if you were going to do this, to continue working with whoever your small group leader would be. That would make sense. But of course, you're open to looking at, to working with somebody else as well. So somebody just chatted. Is that what that's called? Chatting on here? They sent me a little message and asked about CEUs. And yes, there are CEUs available for the distance course. I think maybe it's on the next slide. Let me see. I thought I put that somewhere. I did. So you can get 28 CEUs if you're a mental health professional. And that's for the distance course specifically. There aren't CEUs set up for the mentoring. Some states will allow you to count that if there's some minimal requirements. So you'd have to kind of check with your own state to see if that would be allowed. In Oregon, we're able to use some hours for that kind of thing, group mentoring. So you could check that out for yourself. But the 28 CEU hours that's through our Cassidy seminars. And that's why there's an additional fee. That's their fee. That is available. You see what the cost is there, $975. We do have payment plans. If you've been significantly impacted by the pandemic, we also have a little bit of a discount available as well, because we want to try to, it's actually already a pretty good price, but we want to also make sure that we're trying to help folks out if you have been negatively impacted. So you can let us know about that. And then the other intensive that we have coming up, there's Camila. This one starts June 26th, and it's sort of a similar format. We'll have 3 group meetings. So this one's a little bit different because the training is actually online and live. It's not a distance education. So there's 3 meetings that are 4.5 hours each. So June 26th, July 10th, July 24th, those are all Fridays, 8 a.m. to 12:30 Pacific. So we would do a live training together. And then we would have small group sessions in between to sort of help you problem solve. Now, again, this one is designed very specifically for neurofeedback folks. Now, when we offer these workshops in person, we'll often have a lot of people signing up that don't have a lot of neurofeedback experience, and it's not a problem because I've got extra equipment. We can help people figure it out and learn how to do it. Doing it distance like this, it's a little trickier. If you don't have equipment, I'm not sure how you're going to practice or get to do it. So we're really strongly encouraging people that, you kind of need to have your own equipment and know how to use it so that you can either hook yourself up or hook somebody up that you're comfortable with. And that's why we have it spread out this way, so you have time to practice. So the first session, you would learn the focus protocols, and then have 2 weeks to practice. And you'd have a small group mentoring session. And then the second one, you'd learn the mindfulness and open heart protocols, have 2 weeks to practice, have a mentoring session, and then you'd have the last session. So we're doing that right now. We're finishing up one round of that, and it went pretty well. So we decided to go ahead and do it again. You can see there the cost of this. It's $650, and it's eligible for 15.5 CEUs, again, through our Cassidy seminars. And this would obviously count for that 3-day didactic as well. So again, this is one of those weird ones where it's like, well, wait a minute, 15.5 hours, that's not exactly 3 days, is it? It's like, no, but then you've got the small group meetings and you've got some other stuff in there. So this is one of those where we're kind of flexing it a little bit, and allowing this to sort of count as those hours. Phew, okay. Oh, look, I got the little spinny thing on there. I didn't even know I had that on there.
Nice.
So I'll go back so I don't make people dizzy. Or I'm going to hypnotize you.
I like it.
So at this point, I just want to open it up and see what kind of questions people have, or comments, or kind of whatever might be floating around for you. Or if there's, if the folks who are already involved with us, if you have something to add that I missed or you wanted to kind of throw in there, please do.
Well, one thing I was thinking is, and hi, I'm Stephanie Best, which you can probably see on my little name tag. I'm one of the trainers, and I'll be leading one of the small mentoring groups for the Fast Track NeuroMeditation Online Intensive coming up. And I found that when I went through the process of getting certified myself, I had been a meditator, and just personally what it contributed and continues to contribute to my personal practice, it has been really wonderful. I mean, it's expanded my understanding. I really never knew these different things about the different styles and how it impacts my brain. And so now I feel like my own personal practice is so much more informed, and I am able to really individualize it. I started working with Jeff in 2017. So over the last 3 years, I feel like it has just taken my practice up to another level in terms of, we talk about peak performance. And when you've mastered all 4 of these styles, you can really check in and see what is it that I need at this time in my life or today, given whatever's going on. And you can sort of nudge your brain more into a state of balance based on wherever it's starting from, because your brain is in a different state kind of every day, or depending what's going on in your life. So I've really benefited from that a lot personally. And then I think that absolutely makes you a better meditation teacher, a better teacher of these concepts. But I just wanted to highlight the personal growth and the personal benefit that I feel you get out of this.
Thanks, Stephanie. I didn't even put her up to that.
It's true. Also, it's a bunch of cool folks that are really, these are just good people that are involved with this institute. It's been a pleasure to watch it grow. And, everybody that's coming on board, they're wholehearted. They are really, it's a values-driven mission, and they're just excellent people, and they're pretty high quality too. So I'm learning a lot from my colleagues, which is really cool.
Pretty high quality.
Except for Jeff,
Right, it's like a 7.
But
I have a question about the intensive. So do you still do the 30 contact hours with that program as well? Right.
Yeah, so the intensive would, right, so that's going to be kind of that didactic information, and then also some of the mentoring. But then so you could do the intensive and not go through the certification, right? And so, we have a lot of people sign up for our intensives or workshops that don't go on to certification.
Okay.
So you know, if you decided to do the certification, then yeah, then you would have to do those 30 contact hours.
I think it would help to go back to the slide that has the level 1 requirements, and then we can highlight which one met. Yes, yes. So the upcoming online intensive would meet requirement 1 and the 6 of your 10. So that would be number 5, 6 of those 10 hours. If you wanted to use that as a fast track to certification, then you would also be working individually with a mentor to do your additional 4 one-on-one hours of mentoring. And in that time, what we'd be doing is, you know, discussing your personal meditation practice and bringing these concepts into it, having you complete reviews of each of the chapters in the book, and then at the same time have you be working on 30 contact hours that, like, I will be helping my mentees with their work with individual clients of their own, or however they're using their contact hours. And so that's how I see part of my role as a mentor is to really help them with that, be there for them with questions. You know, oh, I tried it with this person and this came up, what do you suggest? Or this was this weird thing. So that's what Jeff was talking about. The individual one-on-one can really help a lot with that kind of a thing.
Thank
Ian
you.
Capron here. I've got a question.
Go for it.
Okay, it's I've got a fairly broad background with EEG, but you know, given the social distancing that we're doing right now, how are the EEG practitioners managing to work with that?
Yeah. That's a great question. And, you know, we've got folks kind of all over the country, well, and actually folks in other countries as well. And so everybody's managing it differently. And so most of the people, I would say at this point, are still not in their offices. They're not in their clinics. They're not, you know, and so they are at this point either practicing on themselves or with people that they have, you know, that are kind of in their circle that they have, you know, so their partners, or, you know, they're wrangling their teenage kids in, you know, and so right now that's how most people are kind of getting their practicing in is either through their self or people in their close circle. Not many of the folks are back in the office yet. I know 1 or 2 people who are seeing a couple of folks in person. And so, you know, obviously they're doing that, but that's the rarity at this point. And I really don't expect a whole lot of that for a while still.
I did get an email this week from BCIA, the Neurofeedback Credentialing Agency, giving some directions for people who are meeting in person, who are beginning to, just some clinical operational procedures for contagion management is the name of the document. I think you can just find it on their website. So depending on where you're living and what the rules are right now.
Great. And we'd be happy to forward that to you, Ian, if you'd like.
Yep, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sure.
By the way, a few years ago, there were a number of companies were trying to create units that could be sent home. The client would rent them. And is that at all feasible with the current equipment?
Actually, it is. So 2 of the companies that I work with, so we work with, you know, we're kind of hardware agnostic in some ways that, you know, we're not trying to sell our own hardware or anything like that. We're using other people's hardware and software. And so at this point, we use BrainMaster, NeuMind, and BioTrace primarily that we have things built out for. And both BrainMaster and NeuMind have home training systems. Actually, NeuMind is quite elegant, where you know, the client can either rent a 2-channel system or, you know, they could purchase one, and they're relatively inexpensive. I don't know, $600 or something like that. So, you know, in some cases, the clinician will rent it to them or add it into their cost. They've got a bunch of great training videos on how to hook yourself up and that sort of thing. And essentially, the therapist can create the protocol that the clients have access to through an online confidential portal. And it's set up so that the client can't modify anything. They can only use it the way that it was designed by the therapist. And then the therapist has access to all of that data and everything else. So it's actually, and we've actually got the neuromeditation protocols built into that system as well. And so we've started using that with the neuromeditation protocol so that people can train at home, or I can actually train remotely. You know, I've got a guy actually right now in Massachusetts, and we're doing that with a BrainMaster system. He bought a BrainMaster system, and I can get in and I can actually control his computer remotely. So he can hook himself up, and I can be adjusting his thresholds for him during the session and kind of talk him through that. So there are some ways that we're starting to get creative with some of this.
Okay, great, thanks.
Sure. Somebody chatted with me.
Yes, Linda would like to know more about the yoga specific certification.
Ah, yeah, great. I'm glad you brought that up.
Hi,
That's you.
yeah, I'm on. Actually, Linda and I know each other very well, and Linda, I will send you a follow-up email. Linda's done some training with me previously that we can count towards the mentoring. And so, Linda, I'll talk more specifically to you about that. In terms of just some general ideas, if any of you have a yoga background or know someone who might be interested, for the standalone certification in neuromeditation yoga, you need a previous certification at least the basic level that's recognized by Yoga Alliance. So in the jargon of the yoga world, you need a 200-hour certification and then come into the neuromeditation training. Now, like Jeff was saying, it could be that you're involved in a 200-hour level training and you want to go ahead and get this started. That's totally fine. But our standalone neuromeditation yoga training isn't sufficient to start you from ground zero in yoga techniques. It's really an add-on certification after a basic training in yoga.
Angie, I have a question. What if you had a long-standing, more than 10-year meditation practice yourself, but you're not a yoga teacher?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So let's talk. If you're in that camp, let's talk and let me get an understanding of what more of a connection of what your understanding of how to teach pranayama techniques and the movements or the postures, which are asana techniques. That all folds into the training for neuromeditation yoga. But that if you don't have the certification, but you have long-standing experience in yoga, that's where Jeff was talking about the individualization of the training really comes in. So we can talk about that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Asking for a friend. No, just kidding.
Yeah.
I was so excited when he told me they were going to be bringing someone on, which for yoga, and I would just like to learn more from myself.
Yeah. So, I mean, of course, you're welcome to take the training. Anyone's welcome to take the training from a yoga perspective if you're just interested in how we apply these ideas to the practice of yoga. I also wanted to follow up on that conversation. There are many really good yoga teacher training programs that aren't recognized by Yoga Alliance. And if that applies to you as well, that's another conversation. Just we used as a starting point that you need to have a certification in an organization that's recognized by Yoga Alliance. But if that's not you, then contact me and let's have a conversation there as well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
It makes a lot of sense to me because I have paired my yoga and meditation practices for so many years. And, and then as a clinical psychologist, I'm also well aware, for instance, some of that research that comes out of Sarah Lazar's lab, talking about the neuroscience of mindfulness, meditation, yoga, and how it impacts the brain and the body in many similar ways. And it just fits seamlessly. And so I love pairing them together. It makes a lot of sense to me.
It really does fit seamlessly. And if we go back in the historical applications of yoga, it was always a meditative practice. The groundwork, the foundational assumption was that the pranayama, the breathing work, and the postures were all situated or organized to promote meditative states. So in a way, I feel like this approach to yoga from a Western modern approach is a reclamation of the meditative roots of yoga. So yeah, they really do go right together.
Cool.
And Angie's working on a 200-hour certification that would be part of this as well. So that may be a little bit, but that's coming down the road.
Yeah, it's coming.
No pressure. That's,
No pressure.
somebody, I think Elizabeth had asked, saying she would like to learn more about the EEG approach. And yeah, what I'll do, Elizabeth, actually, if it's okay with everybody, what I'll do is send a follow-up email to everyone and include a bunch of stuff. So some links to some videos if you want to learn more about the EEG approach, because it's kind of its whole thing. And you know, we've got some introductory videos that are out there that I can share with you that might help explore that a little bit more. As well as, you know, like the handout that Ian was talking about and some other things. Yeah, great. So I'll send a follow-up email later today and with a bunch of information and video links and that sort of thing, so that if you do want to learn a little bit more and kind of explore a bit more, you've got that opportunity. Also, I was thinking that one of our distance courses, it's kind of an introduction to neuromeditation course. It's like, I don't know, 4 or 5 lessons. And it really gets into more of the details about explaining, you know, the 4 styles and how they kind of match with different goals and needs and that sort of thing. And some of the basic brainwave stuff. I'll also give you guys a free code for that. If you want to check that out, it would, I think, be useful to kind of get if you don't know a lot about neuromeditation, but are curious, I think it would help kind of give you a little bit more of an orientation. So I'll put that in the email as well.
And Jeff, I'm going to have to excuse myself. I have another meeting that I need to jump on by 10. So anybody, if you have questions about the yoga route, please don't hesitate to let me know. You can contact me directly through the NMI website. Each of us who are already certified in NMI at the NeuroMeditation website, you can locate us on the posting that Jeff mentioned. And then there's a way to contact us directly. So if you do have any questions, don't hesitate. Let me know. Thanks a lot, Jeff. Bye,
Thanks,
Stephanie.
Angie.
Bye, everybody.
Yeah. Anything else? Well, you know how to find us. The website's pretty straightforward, NeuroMeditationInstitute.com. And if you haven't looked on there, you might check that out too. It's a updated website, so I think it's a little bit easier to navigate than it used to be. And so, you know, you can check out some of the upcoming classes and workshops, you know, take the neuromeditation styles inventory. It's one of the tools we have to kind of help you identify which style might be a good fit for your particular goals and needs. You know, and just kind of check it out. See who our providers are if you're interested in that sort of thing. All the certification information is on there. So there's a packet for each of the different categories that explains everything in a little bit more detail. So you can check that out too. I'm sure I'll put that in this massive email that's going to get sent out. So it'll be in there as well.
And I'd just like to extend a personal invitation. If you're interested in the upcoming online neuromeditation intensive, I would be delighted to have you in my small group. I think there's still 1 or 2 spots left. So hope to see you there.
Thanks, Stephanie. All right, cool. Going. Any last things?
Thanks, Jeff.
All right, thanks, guys. All right, you guys have a good day. If you need anything, just let us know. Be happy to talk to you on the side as well.
Thanks,
Thank you
Jeff.
all. Take care.
Bye.